this aspect of service and working and contributing and grinding that I knew was part of my foundation because it had been. But I never expected to be in California. I never expected to be in Arkansas. I never expected to become an American citizen. And I've been really blessed with my life.
What would happen if we just told the truth?
Welcome to TruthWorks, where we dig into the nitty-gritty of leadership and work.
And what needs to change. I'm Jessica Neal.
And I'm Patty McCord.
Our journey together started in HR, but trust us, it's evolved into something wild, honest, and, well, a bit rebellious.
So throw out the handbook. We're here to redefine rules to work for us, not against us.
Let's dive into another episode. Today, we have with us Donna Morris. I'm so excited to have you, Donna. I loved meeting you a couple weeks ago. I feel like we just connected on many levels.
Thank you.
So let me just say a little bit about you. So you are the Executive Vice President and Chief People Officer for Walmart, which I will say is over 2.1 million employees, which is like a small country.
Correct.
Wow. And you have nearly 20
Crazy.
years of HR and executive leadership experience. You were also the head of HR for Adobe for, I don't know, how many years was that?
14 years, a long time.
14. Yes, a long time. So we want to know everything today. Patty, I know you had some questions because you saw a video of Donna yesterday and it prompted you to think about a few things you wanted to talk to her about.
Well, so what our podcast focuses on is truth and leadership. And so while the HR stuff is super interesting for all three of us, because that's our background, I want to talk as much about your growth and change as a leader. Definitely the transition from Silicon Valley to Bentonville, Arkansas. You know, let me back up for a second. When I go and I talk to really large companies, none as large as yours, I always find that the resistance to change is in the fat middle, right?
Mhm.
The people coming in are like, let's do it. We're young. The life is ahead of us. We can do it. And the executives, because they're, have to embrace change because otherwise we wouldn't be there, right? You just have to go with the flow. Right. And so why don't we start with that? Why don't we start with the conversation about leadership in the Silicon Valley model versus leadership in a company that's not only as large as Walmart, but as old as Walmart and family owned for so long. So talk to us about that.
Well, let me start by making sure that I frame Walmart. So Walmart today is 2.1 million associates. We have approximately 240 million plus customers that are active with us every week. They're either coming into our stores, our clubs, Sam's Clubs. They're shopping online. They're shopping across markets. That's just the U.S. frame of reference. To your great point, we are over 60 years old. Yes, we were founded by Sam Walton. Today, the Walton family are great participants in Walmart stock, but we're a publicly traded company. And yes, they do own shares, but they own less than 50% of the shares. So we are a regular publicly traded company. What's so unique about Walmart from my perspective is the way that we've endured specific to three key truths, I'll call it. One is our purpose. We help people save money so that they can live better. Very, very important to us. Next is our values. We truly do believe that our values are the cornerstone. Respect for the individual, integrity, service, and striving for excellence. And then the next is we live by a mantra around everyday low prices and everyday low costs. And that starts to get you towards some of the aspects of our culture, which makes leadership different and frankly, the experience different than perhaps a Silicon Valley experience. And then the other key point that I'd want to make is we have more software and technology talent here at Walmart than I did in my prior life. We have more than 30,000 people who get up every day to build great customer experiences, member experiences, associate experiences, generative AI, ML, platform technology, our own cloud together with 2 other cloud providers. This is a tech mecca. When I came here, I didn't realize I would discover so much innovation that ended up being in this box. So leadership looks different. Leadership looks different when you're leading everything from somebody's very first job, frontline hourly, and or somebody later in life who has had a career, who frankly might still have to work because of economic reasons, and comes back and joins us in their 60s, in their 70s. It's their other act too, and everything in between. So when I think of what happens in America, I think of what happens at Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm increasingly so proud about is back to those 3 cornerstones of our purpose, our values, and really the ethos of our culture is we're a really special place.
Uh-huh.
And in fact, a lot of things happen here at Walmart that are I love the word kind. They're kind, they're considerate, they're caring to their communities. I did not always experience that. And that's not a badness towards my prior life. It's just the reality is capitalism can be very Darwinian. And we're a company that's also, a for-profit driving a lot of capital, but it's so focused on service that you put people first. And we say we're people-led, tech-powered, omni-channel retailer. And that really frames how we're helping people save money and live better. And so it's very different than my prior life for sure, but it's similar in many ways.
I love that you started with business, right? I asked you a question first, you outline the business. The second thing is, I often get asked, well, we couldn't do that because we're not a tech company. I'm like, name a company in the world that's not a tech company.
Correct.
You have to be.
Right.
Donna, I want to know, what was the hardest thing for you personally from spending 14 years in Adobe to transitioning to Walmart? What did you have to adjust? What was challenging? What was easy?
Yeah, so to step back, I was actually at Adobe for more than 18 years. So I came via an acquisition. So my combined service was well over 2 decades. But I was in the top role for 14 years. I think what was the biggest surprise is when I started, and it was the pandemic. So I came for 2 purposes. One is I wanted to make an impact on people's lives. And I started to wonder, was I really doing that in the job I had? And 2 is I love digital transformation. What I think surprised me the most was, frankly, my first week knowing that we had so much ability to move with speed, to be innovative, and to really be focused on people. I didn't expect that at our size and scale, and it was a real pleasant surprise. We had, in my second week of work, we had to respond to the pandemic because we're a frontline business. And the ability to quickly stand up new ways to support our associates and how quick we were able to do that was a big surprise because I thought I was leaving the world of speed. I thought, I'm never going to work that fast again. And I also thought, I'm going to work really hard, but it'll be different. I'll tell you, I've never worked harder in my life. And the speed by which we work is incredible. And I wouldn't have asked for anything different. I love the time that I was at Adobe. I'm so proud of what Adobe did accomplish, is accomplishing, and will accomplish in the future. But I believe all that experience allowed me to be the leader that I am today here at Walmart, where I get to touch, we estimate potentially upwards to 20% of the U.S. workforce has worked for us. So if our team can actually influence that for individuals to have better growth opportunities, first and foremost with Walmart, or maybe outside Walmart, then I feel like my purpose is being served more effectively. And I didn't expect that. I didn't expect that would have been the opportunity and or that would have been the challenge going into taking the role.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
On the growth and retention aspect, I've always really admired Walmart for the development and the investment that they put into their associates and how long people stay. And, many, many companies, as you know, are trying to figure out, career development. How do we create the right levels and layers, and how do we keep people that we want to keep? What do you think about that when you strategize about that at Walmart?
It's been foundational in our growth. And, I guess stepping back, when companies are blessed with growth, that means that there's opportunity for people to learn in their roles. And so we have just had a foundation set because of the early years of starting small and continuing to grow, that just unleashed lots of opportunity. Now we need to be far more formulaic in terms of how we grow people and predictive of what are the roles that we are seeing more of. And how do we make sure that we create the opportunities in the flow of work and or through our academies, or what we call Live Better You, to actually educate people and go through the opportunity to get those opportunities. Some statistics for you: 75% of our store managers started in the front line. So they started being an hourly worker and they worked their way up. We have today more than 5,000 stores here in the US. So there's lots of opportunity for growth. And we do have a formalized academy to equip those managers to be effective. Those are big businesses. They're 300 to 400 people. Their revenue anywhere from 100 million and beyond, but they're also in store and online. So those same stores during the pandemic, we continue to reimagine our business. They're fulfillment centers. They're basically curbside, they're delivery. And so those store managers are running a multifaceted business. So it's really important for us to build capability. I'll give you another example: information security. We're a heavily trafficked website. We have around 500 frontline associates right now that are studying. We're supporting those studies, paying 100%. And the off-ramp is they'll become part of our global tech team and they become actual information security analysts. Life-changing revenue. Another one is fulfillment centers and distribution centers to our driver program. Life-changing. Go from hourly worker, approximate salary between $90,000 and $110,000 a year. We're the largest private fleet in America. So when I hear people say, well, we can't really provide opportunities, the best opportunities are in the jobs that you have today. How do you continue to provide feedback? How do you continue to set stretch goals? How do you continue to make sure an individual has the opportunity to learn something new? I think the challenge for those of us that call ourselves HR leaders or people leaders is learn your business, learn the direction it's going, determine what you're going to need in terms of skills and capabilities, and position yourself so that you can build the skills and capabilities to unlock the potential of the business and the people that actually work for you. That's the work that all of us have to do.
Hallelujah.
Totally.
I mean, you are
Learn
speaking to the choir.
business.
Well, you said something, I think, deeper that's really, really important, certainly to our function, but to everybody else, which is look forward, look forward, look forward, be prepared, be prepared, be prepared, right? Don't hand wring about how many jobs are we going to lose to AI? What's going to
Correct.
happen to the way we've always done things? I mean, one of my questions for you was just like a simple one. It's like, how many HR best practices do you throw away? Like one of them I thought of was clearly you can't have consistency because you have so many different businesses. And then just as we were talking, I was thinking in the old days, I would think we could always win hiring a tech person over somebody like Walmart, right? Just because of the reputation of the company as being old school. And now when I hear you talk, I think, oh my God, at that scale, how many tech people just eat it up?
Oh, yeah.
Because that's what they love. I mean, it's like,
They love doing great work. Great
Yeah.
work, right? So we went on a 60-day sprint last year to build what we call My Assistant, which is an internal chat GPT capability that we have in our own container app that we've built, which we call Me at Campus. Some of those data scientists had been with us, short period of time, like literally right out of school. Some of them had been with us 10, 15, 20 years. Across the board, they all said that was the best project we worked on. And I was like, let's get this out fast, 60 days, let's do it, let's launch it, get feedback. And a bunch of learnings there. People want to continue to grow and learn and be challenged. Walmart's fortunate. We're providing those opportunities. I think the challenge for companies of any size is how do you continue to make sure that your workforce, as you said, Patty, is future forward and is building the opportunity for people to learn and ignite. The only thing about the future will be there'll be continued change and we'll need to learn something new and different. So how do you equip your workforce to do that?
Yeah, my fantasy was I'd go into a company and say, we're all running as fast as we can to the right. Now we're going to turn left. And the whole group would go, yay, change. But it's great that you're able to take that all the way down to the greeter in the store, right? But back to the, what stuff have you just thrown away and what stuff do you think is really important for us to keep as leaders and as people leaders?
Well, I think at macro, you'd be surprised. So I may have abolished, performance reviews at Adobe, but we haven't abolished them here. And part of the reason why we haven't is we need to have some type of mechanism at scale that ensures that people are setting objectives, they're giving feedback, they're receiving feedback, and they're having a growth and development discussion. So what I would say is fail fast is an important concept that is a Silicon Valley concept, that is one that I think we're really effective of looking at here at Walmart, which is really good. I think another point that we've discussed is don't assume that even knowing we are people-led, tech-powered, sometimes it can be tech-powered and that's good enough. It doesn't always need to be people and tech. Sometimes it can be just people. Sometimes it can be just tech. Let me give you an example. During the pandemic, in one period of time, there were a lot of companies early on furloughing talent, like the airlines, hotels, service restaurants, because everybody was closing. We, on the other hand, were having to feed America and other countries and markets where we operated. We hired 500,000 people in 6 weeks. How do we do that? All of a sudden, we turned 24-hour hiring on. And we did online assessments. We decided, you know what? We don't need to background check everyone. We can background for anomalies. We don't have to background for everyone. And we basically said, as a comfort level, if they go through the filter of our assessments that are customer-oriented and they come out on the other side as positive, let's bring them on board. Let's get them on our team and let's see what happens. We hired phenomenal people. At the end of that, I believe we had retained well over half that chose not to go back to their prior employers, but to stay and grow with us because they saw something new, different, etc. What that meant, though, is the team was like, oh, we can go back to the old way of hiring. It's like, maybe not. That was working for us. So why would we change? So I think to your point is—
I love that example.
We have taken some areas of opportunity and said, what can we do? Now, do we use that same approach for hiring back to, a tax accountant? No, we don't. So we have a different process. And so I think your comfort level with saying it does not have to look the exact same process-wise everywhere works. And I think we're also fortunate that we can try things out in different parts of the business and say, did that go well? Great. Let's see if we can bring it somewhere else as well.
I love that. And, Patty and I sort of have a reputation of being process haters, and we're not. We're just bad process haters. And I think, so many companies, especially as they get bigger, they stick to the same processes, right? Because they worked at a certain period of time, but they never go back and stop doing it that way. It's like, well, we've just done it this way. It works for us. But it's like, well, it does not work anymore. It's slowing you down and you're sort of bogged down with process and bureaucracy. But what I love about that, you said, is that not all processes have to be the same. They have to be good for the business challenge that you're up against.
Yeah, I also love that you can have technology without people.
Yeah.
Like, okay. Like, somebody doesn't need to hold your hand to figure out if you're going to work swing shift or not.
Correct. And you can automate a lot of that.
Right. But you need to be really accurate and flexible about what shift that you work
Correct.
and giving enough notice and
Correct.
all those good kind of things. And those are things that people do. But the scheduling is like a no-brainer. I remember in my early startup days, one of the things that Reed Hastings taught me was there's great uses for technology and really bad uses for technology. And so, the
Correct.
way you get smart over time working with technology is to realize which is which.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I think another point that both of you are making is the role of people in organization doesn't need to be process. I mean, if
Yeah.
anything, I roll my eyes on process or programs. What is going to be most impactful and what can you actually empower people to do without a process? I
Mhm.
mean, at the end of the day, people want to be empowered. They don't need a user guide. All of us live in a world now that we don't use user guides, right? Everything needs to be consumer grade. And that has to apply to your people experiences. How can they be consumer grade? Really easy. Allow people to actually focus on their work, not focusing on the administrivia of doing work. If that makes sense.
Love.
I stopped saying empowered because I say people walk in the door with power, and most companies have all these things that just take it away from them.
They take it
that.
away.
So we're not really giving them power. We're allowing them to exercise the power that they have by being smart people who want to do a good job.
Right.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Well, since we're on the sort of talking about internal process and systems, and AI is obviously we've been talking about AI for a very long time in this group, but it's a thing out in the ethos now and everybody's talking about it. What are you doing internally from an AI perspective that you think is really pushing behavior change or getting more alignment, giving power back to folks to make better decisions?
Yeah, there's a lot of things across the business, but specific to our campus associates. So think of these group of associates as individuals that come into offices.
Mm-hmm.
We built this app, which we call My Assistant. We're still learning why people are using it, but they're using it specific to think of it as a thought prompter. So drafts of communication, drafts of performance objectives, drafts of product specs, drafts in terms of speaker notes, etc. And what we're learning is which functions, which groups adapt to it more than others tells you a lot about even functionally the change management that's required for people to think differently. I'm super proud of our people team. The team has leaned in, been early adopters, things like drafting job specs, all getting done. And over time, we're going to see more around scheduling and how we actually get that all automated and all the rest. But I think some of our best examples are in the flow of work. Can you use generative AI to make yourself more effective? And we're seeing lots of use cases relative to that. And we're continuing to push on it further.
Maybe the way to think about it, particularly for people in HR, is just think about all the things that we secretly stole from each other. Right. Right. I mean, back in the day, right, your employee handbook that you never wrote by yourself, you always stole it from everybody else. I mean, I remember like Cisco's merger and acquisition binder was in the entire Silicon Valley. We all used it, but we put our own logo on it. And so maybe that's where you look around and go, what is it that's just an obvious ripoff? Let's just automate that.
I think that also goes to the point that back to, I don't think culture, values, and a purpose of an organization can be replicated. But I think a lot of other things, why not share more?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Why not share more? Why not look to seek to provide the best experiences based on your organization? And if you can share more along the way, how people are conquering skills-based hiring, how they're focusing more broad-based on equipping their employees to take advantage of generative AI. All of those things shouldn't be, I think, sacred to one organization.
Yeah.
I think they're the ability to share because that helps the workforce overall, which I think is really positive.
And since you have a country, to have that ethos become part of your culture, I love what you said about We used to call them skunk works. I mean, this is when I always talk to big organizations, like pick somebody and just let them try it.
Right.
Right. Just leave them alone and let them try and do what they think is best. And if it's a failure, no big loss, right? If it's a great idea, then we can share that idea with the rest of the company. And I think that comes from all three of us being steeped in the world of development where it's never done and it's always better and you can always enhance it. And so, I always tell people best practices is what everybody else does. And so innovation is about constantly rethinking all of it.
And I think it goes, Patty, to the point that was made is we're now living in a world where every company does have to be digital.
Yeah.
Every company needs to continue to focus on how they're advancing and innovating to best serve whoever their constituents are, customers, members, subscribers, employees. You sort of fill in the blank. But the importance is making sure that you're providing that delightful experience that can allow you to innovate and adjust quickly to adapt to whatever that cohort is and growing that cohort, right? So
yeah,
that's what's really important.
So internally, maybe more in the stores or in some of the fulfillment centers, is there a fear of AI and the changes that it may bring? And are you guys having to navigate that? Or is it like everybody's embracing it?
I couldn't be more proud of our frontline associates. I mean, they've continued to embrace change over the last many, many years. In fact, I would say that our frontline are the role models for the rest of the organization. They're also the biggest population, but they're the role model for the rest of the organization on being adaptive to change. We equipped them all with mobile devices early in 2021. Their work ended up becoming in their palm of their hand. Their schedule is, their team is. The next flow of work is, their learning is, their information about their benefits, et cetera. And so what I would say is they're not afraid of that. I mean, we're automating distribution centers. It's changing work. In fact, it's taking the friction out a lot of their jobs. And so they're starting to enjoy more of what they came to Walmart for, is serving customers and frankly, doing work that is fulfilling so that they can go on and do other things in their lives. Our distribution centers used to be, and still are in some cases where they're not automated, very physical, taxing work. And if we can input technology that allows people to do that work, but not have the same physical tax, that's a win-win for us. And so I would say, no, we are pleasantly embracing the fact, and I think some of that goes back to who we are as an organization, a humility to serve others. And if you can do that easier because of technology, that is a win for a lot of people. And we strive to provide an environment where individuals can pivot. So if we end up changing roles, then we're seeking to try to find roles for people somewhere else in the organization.
It must also flatten the hierarchy.
We are very much focused when you say how many layers and levels.
Yeah.
We are a company that relative to others would run much leaner in terms of from the top to the bottom, because ultimately, we're all working, those of us that are in campuses, we're really working for the front line because they're serving the customer. And so that is something that we continue to look at, is like span of control, number of layers in organization, which I know, if I put my hat on of being in Silicon Valley for so many years, there was an over fixation in many organizations on how do I get to that next level and how do I get this bigger title? That is something that for the most part, we do not deal with as much here. And we deal with the desire for growth and impact and contributions, and certainly the rewards that go with it, but not the title centricity that sometimes you see in other environments.
I'm glad that you brought that up because, when I first met you and we were talking, we were sort of talking about the Silicon Valley and there's wonderful things that happen there. And you and I both spent a lot of time of our career there, and it shaped us for who and where we are today. But there is sort of a entitlement culture, right? Not only with title, but with many other things. And you had sort of explained to me like how refreshing it was sort of going into this whole other world. So talk to me a little bit about how that felt and the impact that you feel like it can have on a workplace or not have on a workplace.
I've thought a lot about this and even, further to some of the interactions. I think the closer you are to really understanding the customer, the more you take yourself out of it. And rightly or wrongly, I think a lot of businesses, there's not as strong a correlation between what I'm doing and who the end customer is. And it becomes a lot about me. And, I think the economy, for those of us that have worked for a long time, and I'm aging myself, but, I'm like 3 decades into my career here. So the reality is I've seen peaks and valleys in different aspects. Those that haven't tend to be fixated on what's my value all the time and what's it about me. And I think over time you start realizing that your purpose, if you can serve others, goodness ends up coming to you. But I do not miss, is there a spot, enough places for XYZ vehicles and all the rest? I mean, that to me is superficial.
When the pandemic happened, I thought, oh my God, how will they eat breakfast?
Well, right.
Right. Who's going to provide 4 kinds of cereal? Oh,
well,
no.
But then it was like, we're going to expense it because we're having to eat at home. And I'm like, no.
Just simply put, they could always come to Walmart and buy everything that they needed.
That is correct.
Low prices. So,
I was thinking about when I asked you the question about bosses, my kids are in their 30s, and I remember as they all entered the workforce, and I'm their mother, right? The preconceived notions they had about what a boss is and what a boss should do and how a boss should act, and the boss should be all-knowing, and the boss should make all decisions every day constantly about everything that I do. And the beauty of that transition to technology and the app that you hold in your hand, taking care of all those things, I'm assuming helps to say, well, I'm going to use my boss for stuff that matters.
Yeah, exactly. I think ultimately the role that most managers and leaders want to play is driving the business outcomes with the team that they have and investing in their growth and development real time, but not being their caregiver.
Yep.
Right. And back to the point of, not being the ones that have to look after the true feeding of their workforce. That's, but shame on all of us though. Because I think when I say all of us, I think we created
monsters,
an environment where people had expectations that were unrealistic. And, I would hope that what happened over the last number of years created more humility across the board. I'm not sure if that's the case or not, but I
think so.
I think the vulnerability of life, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully made people realize, let's focus on the big macro, which is not always about the me, but more about the we. And, fortunately, not to be an advertisement, but fortunately, finding a place like Walmart really does underscore our focus on service others, which is really great.
Yeah, I'm sold. So you were a little girl in Ottawa, Canada. Did you ever imagine that this is what you'd be doing?
No, I did not. I always worked, though. I had a job since I was 13 years old. I worked at a dry cleaners because I wanted to have money to buy the cool things that the cool kids were wearing. And so this aspect of service and working and contributing and grinding, that I knew was part of my foundation because it had been. But I never expected to be in California. I never expected to be in Arkansas. I never expected to become an American citizen. And I've been really blessed with my life. And so, I'm very fortunate. At 25, I will say I worked at Rogers, which is a Canadian communications company.
Yes.
It's sort of like the Comcast of Canada. And I remember the leader of the function at that point in time, and I idolized her. And I remember thinking, I would love to be her when I grow up. And it was early in my career, I guess, that I would say I was driven, which wasn't a typical girl thing to do, I'll be honest. And it wasn't typical to be declarative. But in my mind, I was like, I would love to lead the function because I loved all the different aspects of it. And then as my career progressed, what I realized is I loved the business of business and the business of people. And our function gets to combine both. And I think in my earlier self, if I'd been exposed to more earlier, I might have taken a path out of people and directly into the business.
Yep.
But eventually, life happens, and I'm happy with where it ended up.
Oh, well,
We
we
are
are happy too. And Patty, that was you for
Thanks.
me. I looked at you. I said, I want to be her.
Oh, isn't
Love
that,
that.
sweet?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I also think for me, and it sounds like for you too, I think that our blue collar roots make a difference.
Oh, definitely, Patty. Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah.
for today.
Love it.
I could talk forever.
Thank you, Patty. I really appreciate it.
We're doing career confessions. Do I need to go to college to climb the corporate ladder to the top? I've managed to work my way up to manager role over the years by staying loyal to a company, but I think I've recently been overlooked for higher up positions. I know I have potential to do well better myself, but is there a chance of me succeeding without having a degree? Is there anything else that could make me impressive enough to one day reach a director, VP role, or should I just head back to school?
I think it's a great question. And I want to start by saying, congratulations to this individual for continuing to work. In my opinion, going back and pursuing education when it sounds like they've already gained a lot of experiences is not a need to have. Maybe it's a nice to have if they personally really want to have something hanging on their wall that comes from XYZ. We believe here at Walmart in skills-based, which means acquiring skills in the flow of work in real time, jobs in consideration. And we do have individuals that have worked all the way up to officer level positions that do not have degrees and diplomas. I think we're changing into an environment where it's really all about people's ability to adapt and to learn and frankly, to work hard. So make sure that people know what you're striving for. Make sure that you get feedback on what you could do different or better to improve. Put your hat in that ring. If there's jobs you're interested in, formally apply. Don't think people might know that you're interested. Make sure that you're declarative of that. And what I would say is go for it. To go back isn't probably something that's required. Go forward. Be focused on how you can actually strive for those opportunities in the future. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go back to school on a full-time basis. You can always learn short-term on the job, and or short-form learning is really, really great as well.
No, I love that, Donna. And, at Netflix, our chief content officer, who's now co-CEO, he was a community college dropout. Right?
At a video store.
Yeah. And he worked at a video store.
Love that.
So I love that you were sort of saying, put your hat in the ring. Because as you were talking, I was thinking, be an advocate for yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
correct.
Let people know what you know. Let people know your experience and put your hat in the ring and say, hey, I want to do this.
I'm interested in this.
Yes. And I think it's a challenge to be an advocate for yourself. It's a little scary, right? Because you don't know what you're going to hear back. But if the worst you hear is not now, that's not a big deal.
That's right.
Right.
It's just not now. And then you know what you need to do to get it later.
Right.
Exactly. Thank you both very much. Patty, it's a real pleasure to get to interact with you.
Anytime.
And just thank you so very much once again.
Thanks for being with
So
us.
loved having you.
Thanks for listening to TruthWorks. This episode was produced and edited by Megan Hayward and Mick Finnegan. Thank you, Kathleen Speckert and the whole Edit Audio team.